Before you absolutely destroy your rear calipers on your 2019, 2018 BMW 330i, watch this video. There's an e-brake on the back, and you need to know how to compress that e-brake before you keep cranking down on it and destroy it. And then it's a very expensive problem. Trust me, I've seen people do it. Make sure you got the right rear brakes. This here is going to be the outside pad. That's the inside pad. The inside pad has the dome around it. What I did is I bought 2 boxes. I'm going to throw this box on the shelf because I know I'm going to end up keeping this car for a long time. And I got both sets of these for about $45. These are ceramic brakes. Both sets. Now you can get one set from O'Reilly's for $80. I bought 2 sets for $45 total. Like I said, they're going to give you the shims with it. You get your shims. Inside, outside, makes no difference which one. But for your pads, make sure that's your outside pad facing the wheel. It's inside facing the car, will have the dome across the top. I already started because I wanted to get this thing going, and then I was like, let me record. Okay, first thing you're going to have to do is remove your caliper. Your caliper is 2 bolts. You're going to have these 2 bolts here. These are 14mm bolts. You have one at the top, one at the bottom. Take those completely off because you're going to have to remove the entire caliper because this electric compartment right here has to be pulled off. This component has to come off. Now, to get this off, the caliper, you're going to need a 3/16 Allen. So get a 3/16 Allen, and like I said, you're going to have 2 bolts. One right here, one right on the other side right there. You take those 2 3/16 Allen bolts, pull those out, and this compartment will come off. That's your electric sensor compartment. That compartment comes off. With the exact same 3/16, you're going to go inside. You see right there? That's inside the back of your caliper. There's a bolt in there. You put it down into that bolt, and you're going to turn it to the right. Turn it right, let's say, for about a good 20 seconds. Because what that does is that kind of retracts the piston that's going that way, that's holding back the main piston. Now, on the main piston, you're going to need, like I said, one of my little trusty caliper compressors, but the kind with the notch sticks out. You're going to get a kit, and it's going to have all these wheels in it, and you're going to see one with notches out. The notch has to stick out because that notch has to fit inside of that notch. So as you're cranking down, you're turning right, it's going to compress that piston back in. That piston cannot be compressed in until you loosen that up. That has to be turned, like I said, I just turned that to the right, and I was loosening it up. Now, you might have to turn it right, you might have to turn it left. I turned it to the right. When I go do the other side, I'll make 100% sure which way I'm turning it, but I know I turned this one to the right just to get it down. But like I said, I'll go do the other side, and I'll let you know. Now, to get your shims out, just get you a flathead screwdriver, stick it up in here, and you can pop that shim out. That side's out, that side's out. Then you come down here and do the same thing. Just put the screwdriver right up under here, pop that up like that. Just put it right up under there, pop that up like that. You do the other side. Just put it right up under there. There you go. Those shims are out. You want to clean all of this stuff up before you put anything back. Clean it up, lubricate it pretty well, then start sliding everything back on. Okay, we want to put the new shims on. They got those little grooves right there that you just sit them on top of those grooves like so. Make sure that the shims aren't touching the caliper because you don't want to have that squeak coming in. Sit them in there pretty firmly. See, those are in there pretty firm. It's flushing everything. You're going to do the bottom one and you're going to do the top one. Like I said, you got those grooves right there. So those are the good guys. You just pop them right up in there in place like that and so. Okay, that's popped. That's popped. There you go. And you want to lubricate them. You want to make sure you get your oil or whatever. I got my grease again. So with my grease, I'm just going to lubricate the tracks pretty well. And I'm also lubricate the actual brake pad in the same spots too. Because what I want to do is make sure they get nice, smooth sliding back and forth. And make sure you get it up in there. And that's also going to keep it from rusting out. Once you get enough oil in there, you're going to get front side, back side. Like I said, that's where the oil is going to be, right down in there. I'm going to get it all down in that groove right here. All in there. Make sure you get both sides. because it has to slide back and forth in there pretty easily. And don't forget, for your pads, you're going to go small side, inside like that. So I'm going to turn my pad around to make sure the small side goes in. And you just set them inside of your grooves. Make sure you get them snapped in there. There's that one, and there it is. First pad's in. You do the inside the same way. Like I said, I already got lubrication around it and stuff like that. I put some oil all over it. So what I'm going to do is just, like I said, small side aiming in. Slide it in. You want to make sure the big side is facing toward the outside of the rotor, because you want this thing to make sure it maintains contact. I don't think it'll slide in the other way, but you never know. Some people might have said, hey man, I got that rotor to fit that way. Don't do it. You remember, on the inside, you got your dome on your inside right there. So those are my pads on there. Next, I'm going to reattach this piece. Make sure you got your O-ring. I'm going to put some grease on my O-ring right here. So you put grease on your O-ring, and it sticks right up inside of that, right around the edge of your sensor, your brake sensor, this little mechanism right here. Then I'm going to snap all that back together, then slide it all on there. Okay, now you see I got my sensor reattached to the back of my caliper. It's flush. Make sure it sits flush, because that little notch in there has to sit into that groove, because that's what's going to be turning as your piston is spinning. It's going to catch onto that, turn it out, and it's going to tell your car, your ECU, like you need to change your rear brakes. Like I said, you only got 2 of these bolts here. Those are the 3/16. One there, one there. Once you take those 2 out, pop that straight up, you'll get access to that little bolt that you can turn, so you can compress that there. Now I'm going to put all this back together. And don't forget, add a little grease around to your boot, just so this thing don't get raw and rubbed. Just add a little grease to that. Okay, as you can see, everything's back in place. Everything's intact. There's your big electric brake component. That thing's all back in. I got my top bolt, that's 14 millimeter. Got my bottom one back on. Everything's secure. I'm gonna throw my wheel back on. Start on the other side. Now I'm gonna go for passenger side. First thing I'm gonna do is take off those 14 millimeter bolts. Like I said, you got one here, you got one at the very bottom. Take those off, this caliper will slide off, and it'll come off with that big electric brake sensor back there. All of that stuff's coming off as soon as you take those 2 off. Okay, I took those 2 14 millimeters off. Now what you want to do is get your flathead screwdriver, put it right behind your caliper, and you just kind of just barely pull, and you can see it coming off. You can just take it off by hand now. Once you've got it kind of retracted a little bit off that those 2 brake pads, you can just pull it right off, like with your hand. There it is right there. Come on, thing. You got to be careful, because there's a sensor inside of there. There we go. Bam. And there's your sensor. So your sensor comes right up with it. So there's your sensor that's going to go into the back of that pad. Remember, that's why you got that raised edge right here. That sensor's going back there. For right now, you can just kind of sit that to the side. Let that sit. I'm going to pull these pads off. Just manually pop them off. And there you go. 2 pads. Yep. And that's pretty thin compared to the new ones. I mean, here are the new ones right there. And those are your old ones right there. So, and all you're really looking at is this little thin piece here. You're not looking at the base. You're looking at this little real thin ridge right there. Let me see if this camera will kind of get it good. Yep, see that real thin ridge? That's what you're looking at. So that's what it should look like brand new. That right there, probably down to about 25–30% pad. So it was definitely time to replace them. Don't forget, flathead screwdriver, pop your little shims out. You can get rid of these things real easy. That's the bottom one. I mean, your top one, that's the bottom one right there. Done deal. Then I'm gonna get a rag and clean all this stuff off. But I'm about to show you how to get that piece off right there. Okay, now that you've got your e-brake, I don't know what to call that thing, an e-brake component. Let's just call it an e-brake component. You got this little bolt here, and you got another on the other side. And like I said, this is a 3/16. So once that's in there, you get that situated. You get your socket, left turn, each one. That's going to come straight up and out. Okay, once you take these 2 bolts off, your caliper should be free now. So there's your caliper hanging right there. And that's the bolt down in there I'm telling you about. And it's also a 3/16. So we're going to turn that, because it has to compress in order so you can compress that piston on the back end. Okay, So I turned that little bolt inside of there. I turned it to the right, and I counted. I turned it about 19 times before it stopped. And now I got my compression tool on here, you know, with the little notch that's inside of my piston. And that notch is going to turn as I turn this ratchet, and it's going to close it. So far, it's almost closed. So there you go. It's almost all the way closed. Like I said, that bolt at the very top inside of there with that 3/16, I turned it right, counted like 19 times until it stopped. And then I just turned that to the right. I mean, that piston to the right, because I had to turn my ratchet, and it closed it down pretty good. Now I'm going to put some lube all over the rubber part. I'm going to put my new shims on, put my brake pads on, and lock this thing down. Okay, so there's the passenger side. Like I said, don't forget to put your sensor back in. You got a sensor that sits right in the top, right there. Make sure you get that sensor back in. I mean, everything's locked down back there. Set the pads, it'll slide straight on. You got your pads lubricated. You got your brand new shims on there. Everything's locked and loaded. Ready to clean up a little bit and test her out. I want to show you this while I can. You know, these were both my outside pads. You can tell because they don't got that hump on it. So you see how thick the outside pads are? Even though they're not brand new, they're pretty thick. But look at how super thin both of the insides are. So you don't really see there's your inside next to your outside right there. And you can see the difference. So you can see the outside pad, so you're thinking, oh man, I got a lot of pad left. You don't see that inside, which is why the inside has a sensor on it. And when that e-brake goes real close and that sensor is kind of, you know, gauging how close that thing is, I mean, that's why you see my inner ones, man, they're super thin compared to my outers. So those are my two outers on the outside right here. They look real good. They look like they got about, you know, 35, 40% left, but the inside's down to like 20%. So you always look at the inside. Don't look at the outside and think, oh, I'm good, I got enough pad. No, the trick is on the inside.